Demonic is a staple in storytelling as a whole, and it is just as important and widely featured in modern storytelling as it has been for all of human history. However, there are a lot of issues with the way that the demonic is presented. And so I wanted to go over recent depictions of the demonic, and honestly, mostly more of the good ones. I think there's a lot more to be gained from seeing those. And we're just going to go over how I would rank all of these in a YouTube friendly tier list and what succeeds and what doesn't, and how I think shows can do better. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, what am I going to be looking for when I'm examining these depictions? There's basically two main criteria. I'm giving a higher weight to thematic accuracy, which would fall under how well do demons represent demons in the story, and a slightly less weight to how uh, literally accurate they are to demons in real life. Although that is kind of going to be the determining factor once you get to the upper echelons, because of course, once you get to the better stuff, you have to be a bit more stringent on the details. Before we start, I also want to say thank you for your support. On my last video, I was shocked at the number of views that my last video got. So thank you very much for watching, and thank you to my 3 subscribers. You guys are great. I really appreciate it. Anyways, what do I mean by depictions of the demonic? Well, this would just be any piece of media where they call something a demon. That's kind of the whole criteria, because I think that words matter. And so if we're going to call something a demon, as opposed to, making up a new name for like this, a race of creatures or species of monster or something, if it's going to be called a demon, then I want it to be at least a little bit accurate to what a demon is. And so that's what we're going to be looking at, things that are called demons. So with that, let's jump in. We're going to be going from the bottom to the top, starting with F tier. So what makes a demonic depiction F tier? I'm calling these like the really lazy subversions, where you have a demonic depiction that depicts demons as completely, totally wrong from what they should be. There's basically no aspect besides maybe like physical imagery, like uh, cultural imagery, that would show you that these are demons at all. Like if I described their role in the story and what they do, you would not think demon as your first thought. You would think that 0 times out of 10. The only reason that they are called demons is, again, just to give them a name and for the physical characteristics they have. So what are we looking at here? The worst example I can think of recently, and maybe it's just because it's fresh on my mind, but the demons from so in the first season of Invincible, I was actually, fine with the way that they showed Damien Darkblood. I was open to a more nuanced interpretation with the character. However, the show kind of betrayed my trust in that sense. There is an episode in which Mark Grayson is summoned to hell to help the demons fight this like primordial evil that came before. And it's revealed that in the lore of Invincible, not only is hell a physical place, like literally underneath Earth's crust, but it is also a good thing that the demons exist, right? Like the demons are actually good guys. They're actually saving humanity by torturing these primordial beings. And so Mark has to help the demons so that he can help the rest of humanity. And there's a lot wrong with this kind of depiction. Like I said, it basically strawmans hell as a concept and demons in general by portraying them as misunderstood, purely physical beings, not even evil. And the worst part, I think, honestly, the most disappointing part of all of this was that demons aren't even that strong. I mean, they are getting beaten up by these magma creatures that like the rest of like human superheroes were able to defeat. uh, there's a scene where Satan powers up to like his strongest form, and then he goes into battle and he just gets one shot. Like it's abysmal. They're not even scary. Mark is just much more powerful than them. There is no weight in the story at all. with the demons in Invincible. And so this depiction is probably like my least favorite uh, in a show at all. There's just nothing to be gained from it. Another F tier depiction of demons in the modern era has to be Netflix's Devil May Cry. Full disclosure, I haven't seen the full show, but from what I have seen, which is that main Green Day montage at the end, it's just a really disappointing depiction. I mean, it's another example of, oh, the demons are misunderstood. Hell is actually like this physical, like explainable place. Like it's all lame and bad, and we should feel sorry for the demons and all of this. And really, what it is just putting a demon facade on a human race, pretty much. So it's just totally wrong when it comes to depicting the demonic as it actually appears in reality. And that's why it's a failed attempt at depicting the demonic. Now, the only reason it's above Invincible is because I at least understand the Invincible lore. I don't want to be rating something I don't fully understand at the bottom. But really, what it is pathetic, and it shows demons to be pathetic. And that's probably its worst crime. Now, what separates F tier from D tier? In D tier, I feel like the demons actually have some basis for being called demons because, in the physical sense, that is the only way that they are depicted in the F tier, or that they are in common in the F tier. Because, like I said, what's a lot more important, in my opinion, to a demonic depiction, rather than like a physical look or anything like that, is whether it is thematically accurate. Because, demons in real life arguably don't have like a physical look. It's just like what the culture has put on them. But I digress. So at least the demons in D tier are somewhat thematically accurate. That somewhat is doing a lot of heavy lifting, as we will see with the first example, and only example that I could really think of, Hazbin Hotel / Hell of a Boss. I must admit that I watched a lot of Hell of a Boss in high school. I watched the Hazbin pilot in high school.
Brother,
Putting those days behind me, it was like a guilty rage watch pleasure type deal. And the reason that it was a hate watch was, again, I just disagreed with this depiction of the demonic so much. I mean, on the face of it, they basically share two things in common, and it's like the physical imagery, which I already discussed in the last tier is not super important. But at the very least, what puts Hazbin Hotel above F tier is the fact that the demons are at least evil, like objectively evil. It is played for laughs in the show, but they are at least acknowledged and made to be doing evil actions, murder, fornication, drugs, all this stuff. But what really makes this a failure in terms of demonic depiction is kind of two big issues I would see. The smaller one is more of a typology issue, but the fact that demons can be born in hell does not make sense. I mean, hell has to be a place that you choose to reside in. And so for these demons to be born already damned, not a great depiction. And it really calls into question like how evil they can actually be if they're surrounded by this evil all their life. For the actual sinners that are like banned to hell or damned to hell, they are also depicted as demons. And so in that sense, it also kind of doesn't make sense because, oh, right, you're a sinner, so now you look like a demon. Like, that's when going to hell doesn't turn you into a demon. And so that's kind of a big failure on the show's part for depicting demons accurately. Not that the show is trying to depict them accurately, I'm just saying if you were looking for a demonic depiction that was done well, do not look at Hazbin Hotel or Hell of a Boss. But the main reason you shouldn't do that is because of, again, the themes, and in this case, the theme of sympathy, really. Because the show wants you to be sympathetic towards demons and evil, and it makes a case for that. Because you're following the main characters who are, again, born in hell. They can't escape being in this culture, and so they kind of view that through that lens. But again, if you're to take it at face value and say, oh, these are demons, then you shouldn't be sympathetic to them because they are evil. They are what made humanity evil, and they freely chose to do so. And so to kind of have this sympathy for them is what really ruins that has been Hotel Demons in terms of an accurate depiction of evil and the demonic. So that was D tier. The big thing that marks D tier is sympathy towards evil, as opposed to F tier just being a complete failure. Sympathy towards, whatever. But now what differentiates D tier from C tier, this line, above this line, is what I'm calling an acceptable depiction of the demonic. Above this line, I would consider actually useful depictions of the demonic to exist. All the demons above this line, for the most part, are evil, unsympathetic, and powerful, which is kind of the core things that you need, and that's why I'm saying everything above this line is good. So for the first look, let's look at Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer, C tier. Good. I like the show. I like the animation, of course, and I like their depiction of demons. Now, I don't love it, but I like it. They are primarily predators, though. They're trying to physically destroy humans, which is a good depiction, but it does not really capture all that demons are, which is why it's only C tier. And we'll get to that in a second. I'll explain that later. The con with Demon Slayer is demons are basically just these vampires, right? They are of human origin, and so it's kind of hard for me to rank them super high in terms of a demonic depiction. That's kind of why they are lower ranked than the next choice on our list, JJK. Again, JJK demons are these, well, they're not really demons, are they? They're cursed spirits. So you might be asking, all right, why are you putting, you said the whole criteria for the list was that, they are called demons. How come you're putting something that's called a cursed spirit on here? And to that I would say, because I like this show and I want to talk about it. Anyways, what makes the cursed spirits slightly better in terms of demon typology than Demon Slayer is that although they still are of human origin, the cursed spirits themselves are not human. But they still have the good aspects of, being objectively evil, trying to kill humans, and being unsympathetic. So again, these characteristics that they succeed in mark them as at least acceptable depictions of what demons are. What prevents these two shows from really reaching any higher is they are pretty much focused just on physical destruction. There is nothing like above that. It's not really about killing a person's affinity towards the good. It's just about destroying that person physically, which is good in the sense that it's very easy to have like this existential dread of these creatures and kind of show in a primal way the fear that we should feel for demons. But again, it doesn't really capture the whole truth of what demons are. And as we'll see in B tier, this gets slightly better. So what does B tier have that C tier doesn't? B tier primarily operates with the same things as C tier, with the added bonus of having some metric of spiritual warfare within it. For example, K-pop Demon Hunters. The last song, Your Idol, is a great depiction of spiritual warfare. It's all about twisting your guilt and your shame, really, into making you further the will of the bad as opposed to the will of the good. We see that these people in their shame and their loneliness and their disappointment turn towards Guima as opposed to anything else. I think it's just a great depiction of the trials of spiritual warfare, what can happen if you fail, and honestly is what makes this show have such a great depiction of the demonic in it. Aside from that, my biggest concern with K-pop Demon Hunters is, again, this human origin fact where some of the demons are of like a vaguely human origin, so it doesn't really jibe in that respect. But really, other than that, it's got a pretty good depiction of the demonic. And I would say that a similar but better way is Warhammer. Now, the demons in Warhammer, and specifically I'm going to be looking at 40k because that's what I know, they again hit all of these spots where they are powerful, evil, not to be sympathized with or even like negotiated with, but just to be avoided. And they have this added benefit of spiritual warfare. Now, if you read the Warhammer novels, the spiritual warfare is actually so on point for a lot of the characters. Watching the fall of Horus or of Fulgrim, or honestly, Lorgar was, I thought, a great read in terms of spiritual warfare, where you see these beings of great power and of great potential succumbing for these very human reasons, pride, envy, gluttony, and shame. I think that the demons of Warhammer 40k capture this spiritual warfare very well, at least in the narrative. And again, they are these powerful existential threat to humanity. I will say probably my only criticism with Warhammer is that, again, since it is a grim, dark setting of evil, good doesn't really win, which is, I guess, kind of untrue to real life. But at the same time, it'd be pretty grim dark if Jesus hadn't existed, right? So, but I digress. In terms of the depiction of the demonic, Warhammer does a great job, except for in the origin of the demons themselves, because again, these warp creatures come from human emotion, because that's what the warp is. Without creatures with a strong presence in the warp, they wouldn't exist, and that's not really how it works. But other than that, there are great depictions, so which is why I would put them at the B tier. So overall, what separates A tier from B tier? We're, again, getting to the point where it's pretty much just semantics. And what I would say that the semantics that separate B tier from A tier is the human origin. At least for me personally, having the demonic be of human origin is kind of causes a little bit of a disconnect, because I like the narrative idea of this otherly force that we are fighting, right? And for them to be of human origin, then that's not really otherly, that's still a human on human conflict. And so that's why I would say that it is important for demons to have some sort of non-human origin. And there's really only one example I can think of that has checked all of the boxes so far, and then even goes above and beyond in this respect as well. And that would say what is arguably the greatest depiction of demons in fiction within the past few years, and that is Frieren. Now, the demons in Frieren, like I said, check all of the aforementioned boxes, and they're not human origin. Yay, there we go. A tier. But why not S tier? I'll get to that in a second. But first, again, I just kind of want to wax poetic on some of the great things that the demons in Frieren do. So again, they espouse this thing of spiritual warfare, where they are lying to humans, they're getting humans to accept them into their homes and communities, and yet they are still massacring them. They have no pity, no sympathy at all for humankind, which is great with regards to the depiction of the demonic. The attitude of the main characters is the correct attitude, which is they just need to be annihilated and destroyed, which really should be the attitude we have towards the sins in our life. As a depiction of the demonic, it just does all of this so well. What separates the A tier demons from the S tier demons is the metaphysical. S tier demons are depicted as all of them are supernatural, as well as fitting all those other list of features from below. Why is supernaturalness important to the depiction of the demonic? It basically explains how evil came about in our world. All of these other depictions of the demonic are evil, but they don't explain how evil came about in the world. And that is kind of the core function of the demonic, right? Is to introduce evil into our world. And so with this metaphysical component is where you really get kind of the meat of the demonic issue. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with any of the depictions from C tier and up. I mean, sorry, there are things wrong, but they are still acceptable, still fun to watch. But really, the S tier demons really get almost everything right. And you're going to see that as we go through two of them. So I pretty much have just two examples of these, and they're pretty similar, so it's going to be quick. But first, Tash from Narnia. Tash is basically the supernatural promoter of evil. He is the opposite of Aslan. in the sense that, Aslan serves his father, the Emperor over the sea, and Tash is diametrically opposed. But just like the demonic in our world, Aslan overpowers Tash, 10 out of 10 times. It's no contest. But what makes Tash interesting is that he still has this allowable power over a certain nation in the book and has worshippers and all this stuff. How? It's because he manipulates them. He gets in their head. He twists them away from Aslan. Again, this big piece of spiritual warfare. Tash is this big supernatural evil that uses spiritual warfare. That's a literally textbook demon. And the only reason he is marked below this next depiction is just because I like Lord of the Rings better, because the other S tier is Sauron. And wow, what is there to say about Sauron? Manipulation is his whole modus operandi. Yes, he's this big, powerful character who is physically powerful, but his main way of operating is in manipulating people. I mean, the ring is just such a great metaphor for our own brokenness and sinfulness, and the way that he can get into the head of anybody, even Gandalf. If Gandalf were to put on the ring, is just such a great way to show how powerful he is and how tempting and how much we must avoid him and that evil at all costs. And so I think it's very clear to see in retrospect these differences between all these different tiers, with again S tier being pretty much one-to-one with the demonic, A tier being pretty close but just having again a natural origin, B tier having human origin, C tier lack of spiritual warfare, D tier being an evil subversion, and F tier being literally nothing. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making this and kind of just re-looking and thinking about these depictions. If there's anything you think I missed, put it down in the comments below. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day.